There's a lot of great animated movies, there's a lot of okay animated movies, but there are bottom-of-the-barrel bad animated movies, movies that are so bad that the world is painfully terrible and the characters are just as bad and excruciating to watch. And one of these movies is Alpha and Omega, a movie that is so bland and so uninspired that its very existence is questionable. And just like a lot of other bad animated movies, IT spawned a shitty direct-to-DVD franchise. But unlike the sequels, this animated abomination was actually released on the big screen, so therefore believe me when I say that Alpha and Omega is a cinematic disaster. I mean obviously with its poor box office performance and obliteration by critics. So WHO's responsible for this mediocre mess? Why, none other than our old Disney veteran Richard Rich. WHO gave US iconic classics as Swan Princess, Trumpet of the Swan, Swan Princess 2, Secret of the Castle, Man He Loves His Swans. Am I right? But seriously, this guy has got to be one of the worst animation directors of all time, like he hasn't made anything worth remembering. And just like Swan Princess, this is just another movie that takes an overused story and adds nothing new to it. This basically the Romeo and Juliet story mixed in with Brother Bear, where one wolf can't be with another wolf, because he is an Omega while she is an Alpha, and it's against pack law that they get involved together, and when she the Alpha is supposed to marry this other Alpha wolf, the Omega wolf chooses to sabotage her getting with him, and eventually the two are captured by rangers and taken to Idaho to repopulate and must work together to get back home. If that sounds like every single animated movie coming out at that time, that's because it is, only where those movies added a few elements to make it stand out. This one doesn't do that. It follows the same structure that all of these types of animated films follow, where one starts off not liking the other, then they end up on an adventure together and eventually fall for each other. Same structure, no surprises. Before I talk about the characters, I have to talk about the animation, which was done by a more unknown studio, Crest Animation, which I'm pretty sure used to be Nest Entertainment, and then down the line Richard decided to change the name. Oh, or maybe it's a Don Bluth circumstance, where started Don Bluth Animation and then Sullivan Bluth Animation. I don't know, but whatever the case, the visuals are pretty bland and unimpressive, especially for a movie released in 2010. A lot of the colors are muted, and the character animation is good most of the time, but sometimes can be rigid and kind of clunky. And as it just me, or was Chris Wedge a part of the animation crew, because some of these wolf designs look like they came straight out of the first Ice Age. Heck, Tony looks like a downgraded Soto. The backgrounds are especially unimpressive and look unfinished. As for the characters themselves, Humphrey and Kate are some of the blandest, most underdeveloped characters in an animated movie. We don't know anything about Humphrey or Kate outside of their one-dimensional traits. Humphrey's goofy, laid back, and really likes Kate. But thoughts about it? Kate is pretty much the same way. She's tough and stern as an Alpha is supposed to be, and puts her duty before her heart, and will do what's best for her people. But that's about it. She doesn't warm up to Humphrey until the plot needs her to, and her romance with Humphrey is incredibly rushed. Just like Swan Princess, the romance isn't believable in the slightest and is only happening because how these movies are usually supposed to go. Garth and Lily are usually fondly remembered by people. WHO watched this movie, and while I think they have the better romance, they were just okay. Their romance is certainly more believable than Humphrey and Kate, but their romance is nothing special. It's just a nice romance that happens alongside a bland and uninteresting romance. Thoughts about it? The geese are just typical comic relief characters, just like Gene, Bob, Speed, and Puff in Swan Princess. They were basically just here to make sure the audience doesn't completely hate themselves for putting this movie on, and trust me, you will definitely regret putting this on when you could be watching Lion King. But again, they were just okay too, not hateable but not particularly likable either, just mediocre and forgettable. Kate's parents and Tony, leader of the Eastern Wolves, are just, Winston I guess is more likable than Tony but easily forgettable. Kate's mom is way too vicious in this one. I like a little dark humor, but she goes a little too far, and doesn't really have a lot of character outside of that. Just like Winston, she's easily forgettable, and probably more so than Winston. Tony, you guessed it, is easily forgettable, and doesn't have any character outside of his one-dimensional trait. He's the power-hungry villain. WHO wants to either unite the pack or take over the valley, which enforces this bullshit conflict that pushes our main characters on their standard animated movie adventure. And it's a real shame the character was so uninteresting, because this was Dennis Hopper's last film role before his death. Can you imagine having a long and amazing impactful career only to have it end with something as uninspired and lame as Alpha and Omega? Oh boy. The only good thing about this movie are the howling scenes. They are incredibly relaxing to listen to, the vocals are right on point and sound beautiful. They are the one thing about this movie that's good, but that doesn't change the fact this movie is a giant piece of shit. Overall guys, Alpha and Omega is another generic animated film made by the most uninspired director in animation. It left no impact after its run in theaters other than being the seed that would create one of the worst animated franchises of all time, and offers nothing of substance that would leave people wanting to come back and watch it, and the audacity to have behind-the-scenes stuff play at the end of the movie to gain audience sympathy and guilt us into liking it is insulting. Look, I know that this movie didn't have a huge budget and Crest Animation is a smaller studio, but that doesn't excuse the bad writing. If Hoodwinked has taught me anything, it's that animated movies that have to look good to be good. Therefore this movie has no excuse to be lazy. Richard Rich could have easily improved the characters' story and world, and rewritten the script to give them more development, making their romance believable. But he didn't. He took the lazy way out just like he did with the Swan Princess, and don't worry, we'll get to that soon. And that is why Alpha and Omega is a cinematic disaster. Anyways guys, what do you think of Alpha and Omega? Do you like it or dislike it? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you next time.